welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. Our next guest has done MBCT program at Oxford Mindfulness Centre. Seema Menon has 19 years diverse experience in the television and radio industry, predominantly in advertising sales. Her previous role as regional head of sales for Sony Pictures Network entailed leading teams with the responsibility for revenue generation for Europe and Africa for the 4 television channels. She has recently embarked upon her entrepreneurial venture and has been conducting various Apperceptive programs for Headstride Ltd. Welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Seema.
Hello, hi, lovely to be here, Janice.
Now, we met at the Women in Sales Summit. We were both speaking, and I really wanted to get you on the podcast to find out more about you. So, first of all, let me ask you, how does B2B sales, how's it shifted between the buyers and sellers to become more kind of customer centric? Now, I know that you've got an interesting perspective on this.
Yes, so I think the shift has been quite distinctive. In fact, it's moved from a purely sales product selling to solution selling, and now to customer needs focused insight selling. And you can see that the metamorphosis has been quite good. But today's buyer is quite well informed. He has a cursory idea of what are the differentiators in the market, and he's definitely sagacious to make prudent buying decisions. So if you go out there, selling your wares or your products, the buyer can immediately sense it and step back. So the seller's objective today is not just to merely anticipate the client's needs, but to invent a whole new category of products and services that will increase a buyer's regard. We all know that, if you have to get a new client, it's almost 4 times the cost than to retain an existing customer. And it is estimated that almost 33% of organizations are unsuccessful at tracking their customer journeys. In fact, there was a research done by Salesforce, and they predicted that by the end of 2020, 57% of B2B customers will switch their brands. And only this will happen because a supplier company will fail to actively anticipate the needs. So it's not just you going out, understanding what is the problem of the customer and selling your solution to that, but you have to anticipate what the customer's industry is going through. Probably even the customer may not be aware of it. So you're there going and actually providing insight to the customer that if he does not take up make the necessary changes, then probably his business may become obsolete, just to create that emotion in this whole communication. And many organizations today have realized that a salesperson can't be the only one who's going out, and there is it's necessary to have synergy and collaboration between the various departments, whether it's marketing, whether it's advertising, PR, including the CEO too. I mean, everyone has to collaboratively work to go out and get this client and retain the client. And personalizing your pitch based on customer needs or anticipating these needs of yours is one of the top sales objective, as being cited by almost 37% of respondents in a Salesforce research. I would say that it's still a long way. I mean, you still have organizations that are doing product selling. You have another organization which is into solution selling. So they are at different stages of the life cycle, but it's definitely progressing towards the insight selling state right
so
now.
In your industry, in the advertising sales, how has that played out?
I think it's very important to understand where the client's organization is And once you have had that communication as to where he wants to take his organization, by researching what's happening in his industry, explaining to him that unless you are seen by others, it's a case of out of sight, out of mind. The customer will not reach out to your product unless they know that you exist. And media is just one aspect of communicating your proposition to your clients, especially when you're in a B2B selling environment. And therefore, providing them the cues that this will, doing this activity will provide them a growth in their revenue by X%. Doing that study beforehand, so that you go out there as a consultant for the customer, as someone who is there to preserve the client's best interest, who's there to help the client to grow his business over there. So I guess, yes, that's a stance that we would take, and that would help build a relationship with the client across all his marketing needs over years.
It's interesting. I talk a lot about becoming developing a partnership relationship. So it's not like you're advising them, you are, but actually you've almost got an invested interest. I mean, you have, but it's actually very, very much from the customer, the buyer's point of view, rather than your own interest. And in that way, kind of sales is changing. Would you agree?
Yes, I think, we must, as sales, probably preserve the client's best interest. You have a valid business reason to sell your product, but you must continue with the spirit of giving. The idea here is not that it's a monastic existence. I mean, you have to remain prudent to survive in the marketplace. But the manner in which it is being done must definitely invoke the client's appreciation. And when it is demonstrated through your interactions that more than you, it is a client who's benefiting from the association, that's when the trust blossoms. That's when the client will start believing and trusting in you. And you must always have that belief or that interest of the client in your heart, and refrain from product dump. Because imagine a client has bought your product, but he never uses it. It just, or uses it minimally. He'll never provide a good reference to you. And also your relationship will quickly metastase to junk. So our business in life, I believe, is to not to get ahead of others, but probably get ahead of ourselves. And business integrity is key. Yes, I mean, I guess it would sound completely different from the sales perception that most people have, that we are out here, we are, go-getters. But at the same time, I think it's very important to have the client's interest uppermost when you go out.
It reminds me, I often say as an introduction that, I don't like the words close and crush and hunter, and, it doesn't sit well with me. And perhaps a lot of traditional sales people are still using those terms, and certainly sales leaders are, galvanizing their teams with these kind of really macho terms, but it doesn't serve the interest of the customer. You're thinking about yourself rather than the customer. You're thinking getting over on the customer. So I love what you have to say, but it probably fits in quite well with mindfulness and the work that you've been doing recently. So perhaps you should tell us more about that.
Yes. So, I mean, I've gone through the life cycle of sales over the years. When I started off, I was one of those go-getters and, numbers, and get up in the morning, put in calls, late at night, you're cross-checking. So all those things I've gone through that. What I found is you have pressures, especially as you go up the ladder in the organization, when you are not only managing yourself but also people around you, and there are a lot of stakeholders, both internal and external. um, when you are saddled with those kind of pressures, how do you manage your own state? Unless you're able to manage your own state, you cannot manage the state and performance of others around you. That's when I got into mindfulness and meditation, and it's definitely helped me manage my own reaction to things. Because there's a very interesting saying by Buddha where he says, and I'm sure you've heard this, that if someone gives you a gift and you don't take that gift, who does that gift belong to?
It still belongs to you.
Absolutely, it
Yeah,
belongs to the giver.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's exactly the same. So if someone behaves very irrationally with you, and you don't accept that, that irrational and that negative behavior is still with the person who's doing it, you are not affected by
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I guess that has brought about a change in the way you react to things, because I'm sure the person who is reacting, who's behaving irrationally with you, has a whole baggage of conditions around him. He's probably had a bad day, he's had an
Yeah.
argument in his travel, whatever's the reason, and that's how he's behaving, in that manner.
Yeah.
But how you react to that is completely dependent on how you're able to manage mindfulness. So I've done a couple of workshops around this, how to manage your stress using mindfulness, and very carefully I've tried to move away from multitasking to focusing on the one concept ahead of you. Yeah, so
So,
it's definitely
so
helped
how
me.
has that helped you in as a sales leader? And then also, how has that helped you working and motivating your team?
As a sales leader, it's helped me to manage multiple pressure points, to manage my own condition, um, and also when I have multiple deadlines to achieve, focusing on one thing, finishing it off, then going into the next one, prioritizing what is more important rather than what is more urgent. So it's given me that clarity. And even when dealing with teams, as well as internal and external stakeholders, I guess once you understand that you are not just yourself, but entire baggage of various aspects of your daily interactions that day, or the behaviors that you have absorbed from your environment around you. Once you realize that that is how people react to a particular situation, you then know that their behavior towards you is not it's not personal. It's just how they've reacted at that point of time. And then it helps you to interact better, as I mentioned earlier. And also when you give many tasks to your team members, then how to prioritize on that, how to work on that, uh, and work on deadlines, uh, pre-plan that rather than frantically trying to meet deadlines. Yeah.
Excellent. So tell me more about your view on diversity in B2B sales, and perhaps in advertising sales. Do you think that we have progressed, or do you think that there is still a long way to go?
I personally believe that there is a lot of scope for inclusion. Media as an industry is more inclusive than many other industries around, and in terms of employing salespersons from diverse backgrounds. In fact, I recently came across a study which said that the percentage of women in sales has only increased by 3% in the last 1 decade. And it has grown from 36% to 39%. And as it goes to the senior roles, the women leaders drop further down. So women only hold around 19% of leadership roles in sales. And this is just with reference to gender. I'm only talking about male, female, gender bias over here. You can understand and estimate that other diversity factors would rank even lower than that. Um, I did face a bit of bias in my initial years when I joined the sales because due to my ethnic background. But I guess once you have proven your mettle, and then your ethnicity and diverse background actually becomes an added value as you bring a different perspective to every situation. So there is a long way to go, but we are inching ahead.
Excellent, excellent. So what's your one tried and trusted strategy that you would offer listeners to scale their sales?
I think at this point of time, when we are in the fourth industrial revolution, as they say, artificial intelligence and machine learning has definitely arrived for sales, and organizations that embrace it will it will grow in this current environment. Some of the areas where machine learning helps sales are in lead prioritization, sales forecasting, predictive lead scoring, deal history synthesis, improving customer retention. So these are some of the areas where it will help the salesperson freeing up their time to actually spend time with the customer, have more face time with the customer, and and work on the actual selling process. And I think that it definitely helps in augmenting your sales process rather than having the fear that it will overtake the salesperson's role. And it helps sales reps to effectively understand and keep tabs on the customer journeys too. And as I mentioned earlier, when there is a collaborative work environment where the CEO, the marketing team, the finance team, the PR team, everyone works together to acquire this new customer or to retain the customer, then it will definitely help the organization to amp up or grow or scale up during these difficult times.
Okay, so I think you have the single stitch pitch. Can you briefly tell me about that?
Yes, so single stitch pitch is actually an Apperceptive program that we have at Headstride. The whole idea is that when you go out to pitch your concept or you pitch to a venture capitalist, the salesperson meets a client, pitches the idea, and then seeks for the client's cues of interest. He has made the representation, but it has not anchored well with the client, with a compelling pitch to move the client to the next level. So our single stitch pitch is a metaphor that aims to emphasize the significance of the very first pitch with the client that must have enough firepower to potentially seal his immediate wound and invigorate his interest in your firm. Because there's no point in flogging yourself to exhaustion again and again, meeting the client and talking the same thing. So how do you engender this first or the single pitch? And that's the theme of this workshop that we conduct with organizations.
Excellent, excellent. Now, tell me about who is your hero or shero?
So I would probably I would talk about one hero and one shero who have influenced me and my thinking. Hero would be Jim Rohn. You may know about him. He was an American entrepreneur and motivation speaker. And I think his maxim, which said, "Learn to work harder on yourself." Rather than on your job. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a living. But if you work on your job, you can make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, then you'll make a fortune. And it's so dynamically altered my perception and my perspective on things. And Shiro, I would say it is Indra Nooyi. She was former CEO of PepsiCo. And she's a fantastic leader and a person of influence. And it was quite interesting how she was very honest about how challenging it was to balance her roles as a wife, a mother, and a worker, um, which many of us identify with in our day-to-day lives. And to overcome this dilemma, I loved her suggestion that first you understand the conflict that you're working with, and it's probably the first step to finding solutions. So once you understand this, you start finding solutions of how to manage this. So yeah, these are two people that I've taken inspiration from in my life.
Excellent. So how can people get hold of you, Seema?
Yes, so I'm available on LinkedIn. My email address, I'm guessing you would be posting it, but it is seema.menon@headstride.com. And of course, connect up with me, and happy to share notes and exchange ideas.
Excellent. You've been a wonderful guest on Scale Your Sales podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Janice. Lovely talking to you.